Okay, so this should be recording this time. I apologize for the first time that it didn't record. I'm just gonna go off and read my speech. Um, so I did write a persuasive speech about the death penalty and sentence disparity. To start off my speech, we're gonna picture two people on a trial for the same exact crime. One is white and wealthy and has the money to hire the best lawyer, while the other is black, poor, and depends on an overworked public defender. Even though they face the same crimes, the poorer defendant is far more likely to end up with the death penalty. This this is not fairness, and it is just a broken justice system. This issue matters because the death penalty is not just about punishing crime, it's about how fairly justice is applied. If race, money, or even where you live can decide whether you live or die, then the system is not delivering justice at all. To really understand this issue, I researched information from the Death Penalty Information Center, the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics, the General Accounting Office, and the Amnesty International. The evidence is clear and shows that the death penalty is not applied equally, and that makes it unjust. So my point today is this: the death penalty is unfair because it depends more on race, socioeconomic status, and geography rather than the crime itself. And I will explain how these factors shape sentencing. I will respond to arguments in the favor of the death penalty, and I will share what we can do to push for a fairer system. So first, we're going to start with the problem. Research shows that the race plays a major role. A review for the U.S. General Accounting Office found that 82% of the studies, the race of the victim influenced who got the death penalty. Defendants accused of killing white victims were much more likely to be sentenced to death than those accused of killing Black victims. That means justice often depends on the color of the victim's skin and not just the facts of the crime. Geography is another issue. The Bureau of the Justice Statistics reports that as of 2022, only 26 states still had people on the death row, and most executions came from a handful of states. That means whether or not you face execution often depends on where the crime happened, and justice should be equal everywhere, but with the death penalty, it's not. Money also makes a big difference. Amnesty International explains that poor defendants who cannot afford strong legal teams are more likely to be wrongfully convicted or sentenced to death. Wealthy defendants can afford experts, appeals, and strong defense strategies. Poor defendants, many of them who are people of color, do not get that same choice. Now, while some people may argue that the death penalty is necessary, they say it deters crime, that it provides justice for victims' families, and that it's reserved for the worst of the worst crimes. But the evidence does not really support these claims. For example, some claim the death penalty prevents crime, but according to the study of Illinois' homicide rates, there was no difference in crime levels when executions happened compared to when they did not. And many states without the death penalty actually have lower murder rates than states that use it heavily, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. Others believe that the death penalty helps families heal, but in reality, the long appeals process tied to those cases are often dragged out for years. Life parole, without parole can hold offenders accountable without forcing families to go through endless court battles. And finally, some say the death penalty is only used for the worst crimes. But studies from the Department of Justice show that this is not true. Race and victim status weigh heavily in the decision, so the system does not punish the worst crimes. It punishes in ways that reflect bias. So if the arguments for the death penalty do not hold up, what should we do instead? We should imagine a justice system where punishment is fair, where it's not determined by race, wealth, or geography. Eliminating the death penalty moves us closer to that system, and alternatives like life without parole keep dangerous people off the streets without risking wrongful executions or creating more inequality. We can take the steps to push for that change, and that means supporting groups that fight for sentencing reform, encouraging lawmakers to abolish the death penalty, and sharing research with so much more people to understand the issue. As students and citizens, our voices matter when we demand fairness in our justice system. So, to bring this all together, we looked at how the death penalty is unfairly applied because of race, geography, and money. We also saw that common defenses of it, such as deterrence, justice for families, and fairness, do not hold up against research. It is up to us to stand against a punishment that is applied unequally and to push for alternatives that are truly just. Remember the two people accused of the same crime. Justice should never depend on wealth or a skin color. But with the death penalty, it often does, and that's why change is necessary. Thank you.